Hello, Shmara. Now, I'm going to do this video in a slightly different format. One, because I kind of put it off and it's the end of the day. And two, to kind of go for a stream of consciousness feeling. Now, as you know, today I watched 12 Angry Men, which is a film that we watched in 6th grade. That was like 7 years ago. Probably right around 7 years ago. I think it was around this time of the school year. In case I scratch, it was around this time of the school year. Now, I rewatched it. And I'm coming back years later, and I like it a lot. This might be the best film I watched in that screening class. I mean, the Chaplin ones were good. They were short. The Buster Keaton ones were good. You probably don't even know who Buster Keaton is. You might. I'm not going to doubt you. I just kind of want to give my thoughts of coming back to something 7 years later, and I feel like a stream of consciousness is appropriate for this, more appropriate than if I were just talking about my day, which I've already told you a good amount about. Anyway, so I'm sure you remember the premise of 12 Angry Men. It's about a court case where there's only a little bit of doubt. There's almost no wiggle room that this guy didn't do the crime. But one juror out of the 12 decides that he just wants to talk it over for a bit. And as it goes on, he and a few of the other jurors start to find tiny little things in the case that make it more dubious about whether it's actually going to be about whether the group is going to find the boy guilty or not guilty. Now, I don't really remember it super well. I remembered a few things about it, like there was the guy who breaks down at the end and crying because he's thinking about his son. I remember the guy who just wanted to end it because he wanted to get to his baseball game, but there's a lot of things I didn't remember. For example, there was one character who was very clearly an immigrant, and the movie did a surprisingly progressive job of making him one of the smarter and more well-mannered ones. There was this really good line in his, like, someone asks him, "Why are you always being so light? Why are you always being so polite?" And he responds, "Same reason you're always so rude, because I was brought up that way." Like, I'm really surprised the film did that with the immigrant character. I mean, it's still, like, he's still white. I think he's European. It's not like he's black or something. If they remade the film today, they might have. There'd probably be like 2 black jurors, an Asian one or something. But for the time, I think it was fairly progressive. Fairly, relatively. But even besides that, there are cool little things that I just don't remember. Like, there's one juror who actually goes back and forth. Like, I just remembered one by one they all go to not guilty. But there's actually one juror who, he goes from guilty to not guilty to not guilty, which is interesting, I think. And then there's little, like, cinematic things I didn't pick up on before. There's this one juror who's, like, the most logical one. He's the second to last to switch, or third to last. And he's just arguing based on the logic of the case. He needs everything disproven before he'll go to not guilty. Now, one of the things as the movie goes on is that all the characters are, like, really sweating. It's just an easy way to show that a lot of time is passing, that they start really sweating. Like, they're exhausted. It's a small room, and it takes forever. And then at one point, they're all covered in sweat. And if you look closely at him, he's not covered in sweat. And someone asks him, "Do you ever sweat?" And he says no. But if you watch carefully, every single time he's going on a logical argument and someone pokes a hole in his argument, a single bead of sweat goes down his forehead. I mean, maybe I noticed that in 6th grade. I certainly don't remember it from 6th grade. But cinematically, that's just like a cool little nod. I like it. But then there's some stuff that's just funny. Like, the one older juror, the really old one, the first one who went to not guilty after the protagonist, they do a lot of extreme close-ups on his face, and it's almost just kind of funny. It's just like every few minutes they just zoom in on his face a lot. It's odd. It's not bad, but it's odd. It was just interesting going back and rewatching this film, considering I watched it 7 years ago. Now I'm going to film school. I watched it for a history class, and now I watched it for a film class. Also because I'm basically a different person. I've lived 7 years. That's a lifetime. And I still liked it. I guess there are a few things that don't change very much over the course of 7 years, even if you go for a bit without them in the middle. I love you, Shmara. I hope this suffices as an okay video.